Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Penn Vicarage on this lovely sunny Monday morning. Hope you've had a lovely weekend, and thank you for joining us as we go through continuing our adventure through the remarkable book of the prophet Isaiah. And today we are in a short little chapter today, chapter 39. So without further ado, here we go. Isaiah chapter 39. At that time, King Merodach Baladan, son of Baladan of Babylon, sent envoys with letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he heard that he'd been sick and had recovered. Hezekiah welcomed them and showed them his treasure house, the silver, the gold, the spices, the precious oil, his whole armory, all that was put in his storehouses. There was nothing in the house or in all his realm that Hezekiah did not show them. Then the prophet Isaiah came to King Hezekiah and said to him, "What did these men say? From where did they come to you?" Hezekiah answered, "They've come to me from a far country, from Babylon." He said, "What have they seen in your house?" Hezekiah answered, "They've seen all that's in my house. There is nothing in my storehouses that I did not show them." Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, "Hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Days are coming when all that is in your house and that you have which your ancestors have stored until this day shall be carried up to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, says the Lord. Some of your own sons who are born to you shall be taken away. They shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon." And Hezekiah said to Isaiah, "The word of the Lord that you have spoken is good." For he thought, "There'll be peace and security in my days." And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Right, okay, this is quite complicated. I'll try and explain to you, give it my best shot. So, picking up in chapter 38 yesterday, King Hezekiah had been very, very ill to the point of death, and he had prayed to God, and God had healed him, which is fantastic. Anyway, in chapter 39, he has some visitors from a place called Babylon, which is in kind of modern-day Iran, Iraq, that kind of modern-day Iraq, really. Okay. And there were essentially two reasons why the Babylonians came to visit. Firstly, because they were impressed by the fact that he had been ill and got better. I mean, who doesn't like hearing a good news story? Who doesn't want to be impressed by the power of God kind of thing? So they kind of visit partly because they are impressed by the healing and they want to sort of find out for themselves. But also they also come to because they're aware of the threat from the Assyrians. So the Assyrians are threatening everybody around them at this stage, and the Babylonians are looking for some people to, so to speak, form a kind of alliance with, because the Assyrians are coming. So they come along to visit, and King Hezekiah is kind of taken in by it all. I suspect he's rather flattered by the kind of the praise he gets. But the purpose of the Babylonians is because they know the threat from the Assyrians. They know that they think Judah and King Hezekiah are a good person to form an alliance with. So they kind of come to visit. And as I say, Hezekiah gets taken in by it all, and he opens his storehouses and shows off all the great things he's got, and so on and so on and so on. Then Isaiah comes along and kind of asks them some very pertinent questions about what have you done and why have you done it and this type of stuff. And Isaiah warns them that this is the foretaste, this is the prophecy of things to come. Hezekiah clearly hadn't consulted God before doing this. They weren't supposed to be forming alliances with people, despite the Assyrian threat, and that seems to be happening. And so Isaiah comes up with this threat that one day these same Babylonians that you have are going to take you into exile. And of course, ironically, that's where the book of Daniel comes from. These eunuchs who get taken into exile and so on, and Isaiah says that one day these same Babylonians are going to the Babylon's going to take you into exile, which of course happened in 587 BC. The likes of Daniel settled out there as well, and so on. But the interesting thing about Hezekiah is, Hezekiah hears this kind of bad news, this kind of prophecy of what's going to happen to come, but all he seems to care about is, sounds good to me because it's not going to happen in my time. It's not great leadership, is it really? So in a sense, having seen the good side of Hezekiah could be very faithful, he could be very, very close to God and so on. In this chapter, you see, if you like, the bad side of Hezekiah. He gets taken in by the flattery, he doesn't consult God before he does it, and when he hears bad news, all he seems to care about is it didn't happen in my time. Okay, so that's kind of what's happening in this chapter. But the really interesting thing about this is in chapter 36, 37, 38, and 39 is the chronology of it. Because in a sense, it seems to have got things in the wrong order. Because in chapter 38 and 39, you have the threat of the coming Assyrians. Yet in chapter 36, 37, you have the Assyrians when they've actually arrived. So you've got the threat after the actual arrival, which in a sense it should be kind of chronologically, it should really be in the other way around. So why do you have it seems to be you've got it the wrong way around, because you've got when they actually arrived in 36, 37, you've got the threat of them arriving in 38, 39. So in a sense, it seems to be kind of the wrong way around. And that's because at the end in chapter 39, you have a change there's like a massive change in the book of the prophet Isaiah. It's almost like opening a brand new chapter. It's almost completely different. Up to this point, the main focus of the book of the prophet Isaiah has been about the threat of the Assyrians and being faithful to God and looking to God and trusting in God rather than other nations and so on and so on and so on. So the threat up to now has been the threat of the Assyrians and when they arrived and so on, which happened in about 701 BC. From here, and then that happened in the time of Isaiah himself. That's about the time Isaiah lived. And so you get stories about things happening, Isaiah speaking, and so on and so on and so on. So up to now, you have things happen in the time of Isaiah. What happens from here on in, after chapter 40, and the whole focus changes from here on in, that what's happening up to now has been in 701 BC. Now it goes on for more than 100 years. Because in 587 BC, which is 120 odd years later, the Babylonians, the same people that came to visit in this chapter, took them away into exile. Ignominious exile, and as Isaiah prophesied, exactly what happened. But the interesting thing is it actually all happened over 100 years after Isaiah died. So what you've had up to chapter 38 is what's happening now in Isaiah's time. What you have from here on in is referred to later on now. From here on in is what happened about 100 years after Isaiah died. And there are various schools about this. There are a traditional school who would say that it's prophecy, that God told Isaiah what to say, and Isaiah said it, so they are the words of Isaiah speaking about something which happened 100 odd years after he died. Another school of thought says that there was a kind of Isaiah school of thought who wrote later about Babylon and so on, because some of the details about Babylon are quite tight and are quite detailed for something that happened 100 years after Isaiah died. So what you have up to now is you have lots of stuff about Isaiah actually involved in discussions and so on and so on. He obviously speaks to Hezekiah and so on. But from here on in, and you know things are happening over 100 years after Isaiah died. So in a sense, up to now, you have narrative, you have story. What you have from here on in, after chapter 40, is prophecy. Isaiah's involved before, because that's the time he lived. What you talk about now, after here on, is stuff that happened years and years later. So up to now, you have the threat of the Assyrians and so on about faithful to God. Later on, you've had after the people have been taken into exile, what happens after that, if you follow me. So up to now, it's been the Assyrians. Now the focus is the Babylonians. What's happening now is that there's trouble coming because you're trusting in God. What's happening later is after they've been taken into exile, it's God purifying them and bringing them back. And there's the whole new chapter. So, in a sense, you've got up to chapters 1 to 39 are about the Assyrians and threat and so on. After that, you have after exile and God bringing them back and so on and so on and so on. What you have up to now is stuff before 701 BC. What you have after here is what happens after 587 BC. That's why this chapter is very, very important. And that's why you have the chronology of 36, 37, 38, in a sense the long way around, because now you've gone from Assyrians talking about Babylonians, and you get the picture. I think I've made my point. Friends, have a lovely day. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that helpful in the reading of Isaiah. God bless you. God be with you today. Have a lovely day. And by the way, tomorrow is a gorgeous